have a question on the song The Color Purple.
It's the one that gets me in trouble every time.
Yeah, you have a few lines about Joyce Meyer and Creflo Dollar. So in the home that I grew up in, we watched a lot of TVN. So Joyce Meyer and Creflo I watched them a lot. So Shailene came up with the song False Teachers, and it basically just names up everybody that was on TVN. So that was a bit of a confusing moment for me. So on your song, you said that you were done criticizing Creflo. I'm not familiar with what, maybe if you had aired out what your differences with them was. I'm not familiar with that, but I just wanted to find out what you thought was the issue at the time with Joyce and Creflo, and how those were resolved.
Yeah, a very good question. So The Color Purple, how many people are familiar with that song in here?
Yep.
Okay, so...
Hip hop here, son.
Huh?
We hip hop here.
So basically in The Color Purple, I went through a bit of an evolution, as we all do in life. I grew up in a really theologically conservative environment. What I mean, I'm gonna wait for all the bishops. All the bishops. But I grew up in a theologically conservative environment, which basically just means that there are certain positions that I held theologically that didn't jive with that, let's just say, the Pentecostal movement, or the Apostolic Church, Apostolic denomination, I'm sorry, or the Kojic. Just theologically, there were just certain things, even with regards to maybe certain modes of expression, you know. There were certain things, certain ways in which people that were on, I hate to say that side of it, just for the sake of the conversation, that side denominationally, they expressed themselves differently, you know, even in how they praise and they worship, whereas the environment and the context that I came up in, and even the Bible college that I went to, was super, super conservative, even in their motive, even in their expression. And so, for me, I really wrestled growing up because all the people that I admired always had a problem with basically any and everybody who was a televangelist at the time. You follow me? So I was kind of, you know, there was always a little voice in me, you know, that kind of, you know, was there's always a little part of me that always wrestled with the things that I was kind of being taught about them. But by and large, I have bought into this notion that everybody on TVN was a false prophet, like Charlotte. So I grew up in a similar kind of context. I think that what happened was, for me, when the moment that I started building a relationship with Kirk Franklin in 2005, that's when my entire the arenas in which I found myself had changed. So now I'm finding myself with, you know, hanging out with Kirk, hanging out with Donnie, and I'm sorry, y'all. It's hard for me to focus myself on it. I understand this. Gotta get the merch. I ain't mad at all. So basically, growing up in those environments, I just, you know, I kind of felt like so when I started hanging out with Kirk, I started building relationships with everybody. Started hanging out with Donnie, and Donnie was one of the people I was criticizing. Like, so I would hear like certain songs from Donnie and be like, that's old covenant. I wouldn't apply that to them, right? So I was like hyper dispensational back then, hanging around a bunch of Reformed guys. So again, I'm like super critical of everything, you know, to everything that every lyric, every word, every line that everybody's saying, until I got around these people. So once I actually started getting around them and building relationships, and sitting in their homes and going out with them, and me and Donnie went to Universal Studios together, you start to kind of take a step back, like, wait a minute. I kind of demonized these people in my heart. You know what I mean? I kind of vilified them based on, even if there were doctrinal differences, that didn't really give me, that shouldn't have been enough for me to put them over here. You follow me? As if they're not one of us, right? That's what you see the disciples did in the scriptures with Jesus, right? Remember they went to Jesus and were like, yo, some dudes out there like healing in your name. And Jesus was like, yeah, they with us. And he rebuked them, right? They didn't like the idea that they were outside of the 12, right? They couldn't understand how. So for me, I began to wrestle within myself. Same thing, Joyce Meyer and Creflo. Now, Creflo is a little different because Creflo, I still think that what he was espousing, his point of emphasis maybe 7-8 years ago, I think is what we call in theology an over-realized eschatology. In other words, eschatology. Eschatology is the end times, right? When there will be no more pain, no more suffering, no more heartache, no more this, no more that, right? No more tears, this, right? And for all the preachers who basically say you should have that right now, right? That's actually reserved for later, right? So we just say, well, that's an over-realized eschatology, right? In other words, you're imposing the future on the present, right? What God intended in the future on the present. But it was the prosperity gospel. It was, right? So I did have some difficulties with that, but even he has recanted from some of those things now. Like if you've listened to him over the past 4 or 5 years, hardly any of that's going on, you know, and I really have come to admire him. I've talked to his youth pastor, and I had a long conversation because he called me, and his youth pastor called me and said, hey, I heard you were talking about my pastor. So I did explain to him just kind of the evolution that I went through. But my point is that a couple of things that I learned from all of this. Number one, people are in process. That's one. Whether it's a Pastor Creflo dollar, you know, or it's, you know, a Jeremiah, you know what I'm saying? Regardless of what station in life, everybody's in process, even our leaders. And sometimes we're in process, right? When you're a leader, you're in process under the microscope, right? But everybody's in process nonetheless. That's number one. So even if number two, we all have some things that are off theologically. That's the bottom line. The bottom line is, now, we need to watch our life and our doctrine close. We need to be very intentional about having healthy theology, because our theology helps us to determine, our theology tells people who we believe God to be, right? Okay, so it's important that our theology is as healthy as possible. However, because God is God and we are, you know, limited, finite humans, that there's a lot that we just will not totally understand, and there will be a constant process of growth and sanctification with regards to our theology. So none of us get it right. I had issues with Mary, the whole thing. Me and Mary, we good now though, but we've had, you know, like we butted heads in the green room before, just because I was in my like bulldog, like, yo, you don't believe this? What's wrong with you? I don't understand that song, Heaven. What you mean? One day when I something like, I was just like, I hate how I was back then. But sometimes that's what happens when you're zealous without humility, and when you're zealous without sobriety. So everybody gets it wrong sometimes. I think the third thing is, even to Shy's song, when that song came out, I hit him up, I was like, we need to talk. But that's my homie, so it ain't no, we just differ here. Because my perspective is that just because a person says something false doesn't make them a false prophet. Just like if a singer has a bad night, you know, or cracks a couple times in their performance, doesn't mean that they're a bad singer. It just means they had a bad night. So I don't think that every time you have people who have ever said anything false, I'm not saying false as a way. In other words, if what they're communicating, if their teachings are false all the time, or 95% of the time, then they're a false teacher. But if, you know, 10% of the time their teaching is a little off, okay, that's not they're a false teacher, that is, they just taught something false. And I delineate between those two. And then fourthly, I think that there has to be a reconciling of the worlds, of the conservatives and, you know, those who are conservative theologically, those who are charismatic theologically, between those who may be more word of faith. Obviously, I may have some challenges with them here or there, but that's not actually besides the point now. It doesn't matter that we have challenges. The issue is, what are we going to do to help to sanctify each other in this process. In other words, because what I found is that, you know, what I found is that in the moment where, you know, my life was in shambles, when I went to look for all of my high thinking, critical thinking, you know, theologically lofty, you know, friends and pastors, they was all like this. You feel me? And then all my Donnies and Kurt's and Jamal Bryan and Pastor Bishop Jakes and all, they was all like, come over here, son, come over here. This is where, come on, we're gonna cover you. And they did. So what I found in that season, I was like, whoa. Like, so over here, we got all this in our heads, but not much in our hearts. Over here, they may struggle with what was in their heads, I mean, theologically, but they have God's heart. What would be amazing is if we could figure out how to bridge the gap between these two worlds so that we could sharpen and strengthen each other. And if they see something off theologically, we could be like, no, but actually the context there with, you follow me? But then if somebody falls and we're tempted to put our foot on their neck, they can come and say, No, to restore them in the spirit of meekness when a brother falls. You follow me? So we need that. So those are all the lessons that I kind of learned throughout time, just kind of wrestling through that. But now I'm in a real good space. That song is not favorable to everybody, but that's okay. It's good for conversation. This is a discussion we need to have.
Next one's mine.